Welcome to the Sorority Commentary Podcast. We hope you enjoy this episode. AITA for pointing out my boyfriend wastes a lot of money when he says sexist things. My boyfriend and I have been dating for 2 years. Recently, my beloved Honda Accord died after 320,000 miles, and I had to immediately get another car as public transport isn't an option. My boyfriend began showing me BMWs, and we went to see a 2017 BMW 3 Series. It was $26,000, which was wild to me, as I can get a new car for that price. I ended up with a Toyota Corolla Cross for $14,000, and he called me boring for it. I don't care at all about cars, so I don't mind a boring car. On the other side, he keeps complaining that women spend too much on clothes. I have the same amount of clothes as him, but he doesn't seem to realize it and thinks I have far more clothes and spend way more than him on clothes. Because each of my pieces cost a lot more, I buy a lot less of them. But they last for 5 to 10 years, like I have 6 cashmere sweaters that are over $200 each, but I buy one a year. I bought another one this year on 60% off, and he complained that I spend way too much on these sweaters, and I challenged him to figure out how much he spends on clothes versus me. We both went through our credit cards. He spent almost double what I did on clothes because he bought 14 pieces, and I bought 3 this year. Because my stuff is really nice, they just last forever. For example, every 3 months he needs a new pair of jeans because his rips. I have the same pair for over a decade. Mine cost over $100 and his was $30. He needs winter boots every year and it's usually leaking water by spring. My boots are 5 years old and still fine, but his is $50 and mine are $200. He got mad and said each of my clothes are still way more expensive and I spend way too much per piece. I had spent a long time trying to make the point to him that better stuff is worth the price and pointed out he spends a lot on his car. He has an Audi A4 and it's like $900 a month, while any car would do. So why is he wasting money on cars? But when I buy a sweater that lasts for years, it's a waste of money. Because even he admits, in terms of mileage, a Toyota probably will do more miles over its life than his Audi. He snapped back that he's not okay with a boring car and ignored me for 2 days. I feel like he's okay with spending way too much on a car because it's a guy thing, but since clothes are girly, it's a waste. But it pissed him off when he saw I actually spent less on the girly things than him. Let's see what people have to say. NTA, your boyfriend doesn't sound so smart. Are you sure you want to be in a relationship with him? Not only is he not smart, but he's also trying to claim women in general aren't smart because they don't spend their money on exactly what he thinks they should spend their money on. Like, people can spend money on what they want. Although buying clothes that last and aren't going to use slave labor in their construction and are better for the environment than buying 5 versions of something that they could have just got one more expensive version of is a great idea. But judging somebody else because they prefer to spend their money on something different from you is just very eye-rolling to me. Those guys are all hysteria, no logic, and no intelligence. And they always insist on declaring themselves to be intelligent as if it's bankruptcy, when they're 1, obviously painfully stupid, 2, just shrieking and spitting about things that are clearly just their little feelings, 3, people who you know for a fact have never even had one teacher or boss or friend who wasn't even dumber and a sycophantic idiot to boot, say that they're smart because they're average or less than in every capacity. Why can't some people with penises who aren't special just accept it instead of making scenes or screeching about it or becoming violent? OP needs to evaluate this relationship and decide if she wants to deal with a guy who cannot deal with logic proving his worldview wrong, so he does the whole silent sulking, clearly too emotional to be in positions of power of any kind. Also sounds like he spends a lot more time shopping than her, so there is that NTA. He's being an obnoxious sexist. Bet he really doesn't like you, apparently being better at math than him too. Sorry, but are you sure this is someone you want to be with in the long term? I mean, he's sexist and arrogant and borderline delusional if he's still saying you're wrong when you literally have the receipts and can show it in cold, hard facts. I don't presume to know what people want out of life, but if you're going to eventually want to have a family and children and all of that, you should really think long and hard about this guy, as he's likely going to expect you to handle all the child stuff, likely also expect you to be a stay-at-home mom and all of that. Now, if that's something you want out of life, then that's all well and good, But if you want an actual partner as opposed to someone who thinks they're king of the castle and totally infallible, even in the face of irrefutable proof, then it might be a good idea to rethink this. Good luck, OP. He spends so much more time shopping than she does, and he's still utterly incompetent at shopping. Let's see what our friends think about this one.
Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're jumping into a really interesting online discussion.
Yeah, it's one of those classic "Am I the a-hole" posts, But this one has some real twists.
Definitely. It started with someone wondering if they were wrong to call out their boyfriend's spending.
Right, especially after he'd made some, let's say, pretty dated comments about women and finances.
Exactly. It's this clash, isn't it? About money, sure, but underneath it seems like there are these assumptions about gender roles.
That's what makes it so compelling. A simple spending disagreement blows up into something much bigger about values and maybe hidden biases.
So what we're looking at is basically this one person's story shared on a public forum.
And then all the reactions and comments from everyone else weighing in. Loads of opinions.
So our goal for you listening is to kind of unpack this whole situation.
Yeah, figure out the main issues and see what insights we can maybe pull out about, spending habits, communication.
And how gender might play into how we see money. Okay, so let's get into the start of it. It all kicked off with needing a car, right?
Right. So the user's old car, a Honda, finally died. It had like 320,000 miles on it. Amazing.
Wow, that's loyalty.
Seriously. So she needs a new car. Boyfriend immediately suggests a used BMW 3 Series. They even looked at one, I think it was around $26,000.
Okay, quite pricey for used.
Yeah, but she decides to go a different route. She picks a brand new Toyota Corolla Cross for $14,000. Much more practical.
Sensible choice, seems like. Reliable, but the boyfriend...
He called it boring.
Boring, okay. So maybe just different tastes in cars. Performance versus practicality.
You'd think so.
Yeah.
But then, almost in the same breath, he starts complaining generally about women spending too much money on clothes.
Okay, here we go. That's quite a pivot.
Exactly, and that's where the user starts to push back. She says, hold on, I don't actually think I spend that much, and I probably have about the same amount of clothes as you do.
Good for her. So she challenges that generalization.
Totally.
Yeah.
And this leads them to compare notes. They decide to look at their credit card statements for the year.
Oh, digging into the data. I like it. What did they find?
Well, this is the kicker. It turns out he had spent almost double what she had on clothes that year.
Double? Seriously?
Yes. He'd bought something like 14 items, and she'd only bought 3.
Wow. Okay, so his whole complaint about women spending too much on clothes kind of falls apart right there.
Completely. But it gets more interesting when you look at how they spend. It's not just the total amount.
Right. She had this whole philosophy, didn't she? The buy less, buy better idea.
Exactly. She explains she invests in higher quality pieces. Like she might buy a cashmere sweater for, say, $200 plus.
Okay.
But she buys maybe one a year. Often gets them on sale, she mentioned.
Right.
Getting one for 60% off. And the key thing is, these sweaters last her like 5 to 10 years.
Right. So it's an investment piece, not fast fashion.
Precisely. Same with her jeans. She said she has pairs that cost over $100, but they've lasted more than a decade.
Okay. That makes economic sense in the long run. Fewer purchases, less waste, too.
Totally. Now, contrast that with the boyfriend's habits.
Let me guess. Cheaper stuff more often.
You got it.
Yeah.
He's buying $30 jeans that apparently rip every 3 months or so.
Every 3 months. Yikes.
Yeah. And his winter boots. Buys $50 pairs every single year because they leak by springtime.
Oh, dear. Meanwhile, her boots.
She mentioned her $200 boots are 5 years old and still totally fine.
So she spends more upfront per item, but way less over time and probably gets more use out of them.
That's exactly the picture painted.
Yeah.
Less hassle, less waste, probably cheaper overall.
But the boyfriend, how did he react when faced with, the actual numbers from the credit cards? Did he see her point?
Not really, it seems.
Well,
The user felt he was just hung up on the initial higher price tag of her items, kind of ignoring a whole durability and cost per wear argument.
Which leads us straight into this idea of a double standard, doesn't it?
It really does.
Yeah.
Because she then brings up his big purchase.
The car. Oh, right. Not the BMW he wanted her to get, but his own car.
Yeah, his Audi A4. Apparently, it comes with a $900 a month car payment.
Oof. That's significant.
Very. And she points out that even he admits a Toyota would probably last longer mileage-wise. It's more reliable.
But he justifies the Audi anyway because reasons, enjoyment, status.
Presumably, yeah. But she's asking, why is it okay for him to spend a lot on a car for enjoyment or image, but when she spends more upfront on clothes for quality and longevity, that's somehow wrong or frivolous?
Yeah, that's a really fair point. It does smell a bit like a double standard.
And that's where she brings in the gender thing.
Mm-hmm.
She wonders if he sees his expensive car as, like, a valid guy thing, you know?
Okay.
But her spending on good quality clothes is dismissed as just a frivolous, girly thing, even though her approach is arguably more financially sound long term.
It definitely makes you wonder about those underlying assumptions we sometimes carry about what men and women should spend money on.
It really does. And his reaction, when she laid out all the facts, the credit card statements showing he spent more, the comparison to his car, what did he do?
According to the Post, he just snapped at her
Snapped.
and then
Wow.
gave her the silent treatment for 2 days.
Wow. Okay. Not exactly constructive conflict resolution there.
Not at all. Seems like he couldn't really handle being proven wrong, especially with cold, hard facts.
Yeah, shutting down isn't a great sign.
Uh-huh.
So, okay, that's the core story. What about the peanut gallery? What did the internet make of all this?
Oh, people had thoughts. Lots of thoughts. The online commentary is pretty revealing, too.
I bet. What were some of the main takeaways from the comments?
Well, a lot of people were pretty blunt, calling the boyfriend not so smart, for starters.
Okay. Straight to the point.
And many questioned if the relationship was even, viable long-term, given this whole dynamic.
That makes sense. If you can't discuss finances logically, that's tough.
Right. And the sexism angle came up a lot. Commenters pointed out his reaction, his generalizations about women's spending.
Suggesting it was rooted in some pretty biased views.
Exactly. Like, he couldn't handle a logical argument when it contradicted his sort of preconceived notions about gender roles and money.
Did anyone mention future implications? Like if they stayed together?
Yeah, there was speculation. Some suggested this attitude might point towards him expecting more traditional gender roles down the line, if they had a family, who controls the money, that kind of thing.
That's a really interesting point. How we handle money disagreements now can hint at future expectations in a partnership.
Definitely. And another funny observation people made
Go on.
was that the boyfriend actually seems to spend more time shopping than she does.
Oh, interesting. How so?
Well, because he's constantly having to replace his cheap stuff. His jeans rip, his boots leak, so he's always out buying replacement.
Ah, right. So he's shopping frequently,
Right.
but just badly, inefficiently.
That was the gist. Like, one person said he shops a lot but doesn't shop smart, unlike her more mindful approach.
It highlights that difference again. Thoughtful purchasing versus just kind of constant consumption of disposable things.
Totally. And someone inevitably brought up that Mark Twain quote.
Oh, no, not the one about arguing with.
Yep. Arguing with idiots or fools, depending on the version. Basically saying, don't bother trying to reason with someone who won't use logic.
Captures the frustration, I guess. But stepping back from just this couple, what broader points came out?
Well, a big one was just how flawed it is to judge people based on what they choose to spend their money on, assuming they're managing it responsibly overall.
Right. Values differ. Someone might prioritize travel, another tech, another quality clothing, or expensive cars. Imposing your own hierarchy of value is tricky.
For sure. And the environmental angle also got mentioned.
The buy less, buy better thing again.
Yeah, the idea that investing in durable, long-lasting items is just better for the planet than constantly buying and throwing away cheap stuff.
That's a really important consideration in today's world. Less waste, lower footprint.
One more small detail people picked up on was his comment about her Toyota being boring and that "are you even driving?" remark.
What did they make of that?
Just wondering if that need for a certain image, maybe a more aggressive or flashy image associated with the BMW or his Audi, links to other behaviors.
Like maybe impulsivity or not thinking things through. It's speculative, but
Yeah, just an observation about whether that car preference hints at a broader personality style.
interesting. And finally, I guess the comments about his reaction to being contradicted.
Oh, yeah. Lots of armchair psychology suggesting maybe a fragile ego, perhaps not being great with basic math or logic when it challenged his worldview.
Right, the inability to accept facts gracefully.
Exactly. So, okay, let's try and wrap this deep dive up. What have we really seen here?
Well, we've seen a clash of spending philosophies for sure. Practicality and long-term value versus something else. Maybe image, maybe just habit.
Yeah, habit's a good word for his side. And this whole conflict got tangled up with perceived gender bias.
Definitely. The user felt her choices were being judged differently because she's a woman, while his, like the expensive car, got to pass.
And the core issues seem to be this resistance on his part to accepting factual evidence, those credit card statements, when it didn't fit his narrative.
Yeah, the evidence showed her buy-quality approach was actually more economical than his frequent, cheaper purchases. He spent more in the end.
So the big questions this raises, maybe for you listening, what do your own spending habits say about your priorities, your values?
And how aware are we, really, of potential gendered assumptions that might still color how we think about money, our own or our partners, or just people generally?
Good question. And what actually happens in our relationships when solid logic, actual facts, run up against beliefs that someone holds really tightly, even if they don't quite add up?
That's the tricky part in any close relationship, navigating those moments.
So maybe a final thought to leave you with. Take a look at your own spending patterns. Do they genuinely line up with what you say you value? Quality, longevity, experiences, something else entirely?
And think about how you talk about money and value with the people close to you. What happens when your perspectives don't align? How do you handle it? Definitely some food for thought there. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us.
What are your thoughts on this situation? Would you do the same? Leave your comments and commentary in the comments section. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, like and subscribe. Thank you.